Well, hello, everybody, and hello, Chad. How was your week this week, Chad? We were talking a little bit before the program, and Chad's had quite the week.
I'm cranky today.
Let it spill out.
You know, three governmental meetings, two by the same governmental agency, in less than 24 hours has a habit of doing that to me. But my week was made by a text from Carly.
Good.
Over at the school district. So
good.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, meetings are always like, in my opinion, and you know, maybe I'll get some gruff for this, but it seems like when you go to government meetings, which I've done a lot of over the last few years, I tell you, it's like nails on a chalkboard in a lot of times.
Well, and there's some governing bodies right now that when I walk in, just walking into the room, I'm filled with a sense of dread, frustration, and it's no fun to just even be in the room. And it's not a knock on the people that are making the decisions, because each and every one of them, if we pull them away from that room, I can sit and talk to, no problem. But just the combination of them all and how they're not able to work together, and they're trying, and they're not able to forget the hurts of the past, and they're trying, but all of that crap just rolls into a ball, and you feel the tension the moment you walk in the room. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to the day that that's no longer the case for that particular entity.
I don't know if it will be. I think if I'm to foresee the future, I would say that this is only going to get worse, and that it's going to spill over into all different entities. And I have a reason behind that. I really do. I think I have a logical reason behind that.
And you know, and I'm not going to state which ones have me feeling that way. I think those who know me best know, right, which one that is.
Well, I think most people probably know because they're informed and are. You know,
with some of the other meetings I walk into, it's like, really, I don't want to listen to this person anymore. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at emotionally right now. You can't teach civic engagement. You can't teach proper civic engagement. You can't teach how to be. You can teach how to be informed. You can't tell someone to do it. They have to do it on their own. And one of the meetings I was at yesterday, it was woefully obvious that people just aren't informing themselves.
Well, elections have consequences. And I tell you, Chad.
I'm telling you what, man, it was a frustrating 24 hours, because I went from a county revenue neutral rate hearing / budget hearing, which, by the way, for those that were operating from behind, which was a lot of the people that showed up last night, the county was not going to make a final determination on their budget last night. They just weren't. The only thing that they absolutely had to make a determination on last night was the revenue neutral rate. All of this is ridiculously confusing, and it is intended to be that way. And that intent did not come from our county commission, nor our city commission, nor our rec commission, nor our board of education. They're all the ones that are just kind of caught in the middle of this thing, to be honest. Okay, all those seeds of confusion and all that stuff, that's all by intent, but it is not the intent of our local entities.
But the explanation behind this, now remember, the explanation behind all this, Chad, is to make it easier for people to understand.
That's what the official explanation was. But let's talk about what got leaked to me from others in closed doors in the legislature. The real intent is what we saw yesterday. The real intent was to figure out a way to get people mad at our local decision makers and motivated to go to meetings and yell at them. That was the real intent. Okay? Sorry, that's just the real deal.
Well,
all the stuff that was said publicly, that was not what they were trying to do.
Yeah. Okay?
And so when you have voters that are walking into this revenue neutral rate hearing and the questions that, and I'm going to be straight, when that hearing started, the questions that were getting asked were great questions. They were questions that would help people understand just some basics of the whole process. Okay? And so I applaud some of the folks that showed up last night because that's what they were asking. I mean, they were asking questions like, well, what the heck is a mill anyway?
Are people incapable of going and researching this and finding it out?
And you know what? Whether they are or they are not, and you know what? I'm not gonna even question the motivation of the asker, because when you look at the person who asked, yes, he's perfectly capable of going and researching this on his own. Who's to say he didn't? Who's to say that he didn't walk up there and say, hey, I have this question. What is a mill? How much money does the county raise from a single mill?
I'm with you.
Who's to say that he didn't ask those questions because he knew the people behind him hadn't figured it out yet? I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm saying. Okay. Because quite honestly, that's what I do all the time. I'm asking questions that I know the answers to, but I know others don't.
I guess that's a good way to get people to think.
Sure.
Ask questions.
The thing that got me the most frustrated during those hearings that occurred last night, and then I'll get to the one this morning and what frustrates me the most about it. So last night was County Commission. This morning was Newton Recreation Commission. And just, let's set the stage. The County Commission was holding a revenue neutral rate hearing and a budget hearing. Okay? And they were not going to make any decisions on the budget last night, which was wise. Okay? And so I'm going to say it point blank. In the past I've expressed, and I've never really, I try and not name names, but in the past I've expressed some frustrations with Becky Reimer. Commissioner Becky Reimer. Yes. But she very wisely made a statement last night, and she's 100% right with it, which is we're not making a final decision on the budget this evening. We want to get input from the public first. That's the entire point of these hearings. Okay? That's my statement. That's the entire point of these hearings.
Yeah.
Okay? The public is to be heard. For decades, they would have these budget hearings. People would complain about their mill levy going up. It's not the mill levy that you need to worry about. But they'd complain about the mill levy going up, or they'd complain about this project or that project, and they'd complain about this money getting spent or that money getting spent. And the hearing would last, 20 minutes. They'd close the hearing, and then they'd go, okay, I need a motion to approve the budget. That's what went on for years. Okay? People never felt heard. And they weren't. So she made the statement last night, we want to hear your input, which she's right, that's what they want. And that was that's entire intent of the hearing. And then we're going to make a final decision on the budget later. They have to make that decision by the 20th of September. That's when they have to do all their notifications. Okay? They can, and they've been saying, this has been said for years too. And this is about all, when I say this is every organization out there. They have said this for years. Okay? What we published was the maximum. That's your worst case scenario, folks.
Not to exceed.
They can cut from there. They can go below that.
But they can't go above it.
They cannot go above it, but they can't go below it. Or they can go below it. And, my memory's not as good as it used to be, but as I think back over my decades of covering this crap, I can't remember anybody ever going below. So if the county figures out a way to do that, kudos to you. You've done something remarkable.
Yeah.
Right? You've done something that others just haven't done. But every single budget, that's where they're at right now. Okay? So the Newton Recreation Commission's budget is right there right now. The USD 373, every board of education, every school district in the county, that's where they're at right now. They're at the, we need to set our revenue neutral rate. We need to announce our intention of exceeding the revenue neutral rate, which, by the way, has absolutely nothing to do with the mill levy, no matter how everybody tries to tie the mill levy to it.
Well, it's an afterthought.
I'm burned out on it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Because what we're talking about is tangible finances.
Right.
Versus the formula that we're using. That's really what it comes down to.
That's what it comes down to. But they're all in that point, at that point where they need to declare their intent to spend more money next year than they spent last year. That's the revenue neutral rate. I'm going to say that again. They're at that point where they must declare their intent to spend more than they spent last year. Okay? And I know everybody's heard this out of the mouth of just about every city commissioner, city councilman, county commissioner, board of education member, you name it. You've all heard it. That inflation has been kicking our butt for the last couple of years. And it's been kicking every individual's butt for the last couple of years. By the way, the same inflationary forces that are upon me as a homeowner, as on me as just John Q. Public, they're at play with the governments as well. They're at play with my business as well. You've all heard it. So if they're going to observe the revenue neutral rate, it means they can't spend any more money next year than they spent this year. That's what it means. And because of those inflationary forces, it's going to mean cuts to the budget.
Yes, which is services. I think people need to realize that when you talk about cutting to the budget, you're talking about cutting services. So the question then becomes, what services do you find important, or which ones are okay in your opinion to cut?
Sure.
I mean,
and that's what it boils down to. And Anthony, I think it was Anthony Schwarzenegger. I'll have to go back and check my notes.
And for anybody that's listening right now, because Chad's trying to recall, anybody who was unable to show up to any of these meetings, if I'm not mistaken, maybe -1. I don't know if the Rec Commission recorded their budget work session.
I recorded theirs.
Okay, so then it'll be out on the Kansan, right?
Well, no, I record it just for posterity's sake. That's what I do.
Yeah,
to me, that's the best way to take notes.
Yeah, and and with this being said, like the commission, you can go to Harvey County Commission on Google, click on Harvey County Commission. There's going to be a place that comes down. You can watch the whole meeting, and with any meeting that's pretty much ever taken place since COVID.
Right. So
it's not hard to access.
If there's one good thing that came out of COVID, there it is.
Digitizing meetings.
Right?
Yes.
Well,
there was a point in time in which I was down at the city commission meeting recording it, because this was pre-digitization of their meetings. And then COVID hit and they started digitizing the meetings to where people could watch it. I'm going to say this. I'm not sure that Facebook is the place to upload these meetings, to be quite honest with you, because it seems like anybody that has any opinion can feel free to put that out there, whether it be right, wrong, or indifferent. It doesn't take into consideration their education. It doesn't take into consideration how much time they spend on it. They can just throw something out there and have an opinion.
Yeah, you can do drive-by opinionating.
But as you were saying.
But anyway, the statement was made that the budget is actually a policy statement. It's a policy issue. Okay? My twist on it is the budget is where we set the commission or the decision makers for the organizations. They are setting the priorities of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so when you're asked, and I don't care if you're a decision maker or John Q. Public, when you're asked, where do you want to cut? You're being asked what the priorities are.
Yeah.
And you need to give those. You want to cut the money going to Caring Hands? Say it. You want to cut or not do as many miles of road next year as they budget for? Say it. You gotta, because over and over and over again,
sense, Chad. See, then we're responsible for what we have to say.
Here's the deal. This is the but this is the deal. Over and over and over again. And again, folks, I've been doing this a long time. There were 30, if my memory serves correctly, and I did note it, there were 36 people who were not county employees at that hearing last night. Okay? And probably 30 of them, it's the first time I ever saw them at a county meeting. All right? So when you're coming to the party, give us an idea of what your priorities are. Because for 30-some years, I've been listening to people walk in and say, well, you know, we have to cut our own budgets at home, so you got to cut your budget. Okay.
Where?
Where
would you like me to cut?
And I'm not being obstructionist. I'm being straight with you. I'm saying, what is your priority? And what I'm going to say to you is this. One man's governmental waste is another man's necessary program.
Yeah.
Let's put it, I mean, we can put this in perspective. Okay? So for the last several years, it went away and now it's come back. The Newton City has budgeted for a sidewalk replacement program, and that's reimbursing property owners a portion of the sidewalk that they have repaired because the city has told them they have to. You want to cut that from the budget? Because you know what? I might find that really necessary if I get a little fix-it ticket.
Well, I'd love to do that if I didn't have a sidewalk in front of my house. It's not my problem, right?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
But if I have a sidewalk...
So there's that.
Man, I might want that.
Or do we want to make a cut to our environmental department and then the little you got to mow it tickets aren't going out? And if I'm really concerned about the way my neighbor takes care of his yard, I kind of want those little tickets going out.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I agree 100%.
My neighbor may absolutely loathe her trash man. And I know she does. So, you know, she might be like, hey, let's get rid of that. Let's privatize that. And I'm sitting here going, well, but you know what the cost of that's going to be?
You're not making any money on that one. You're probably going to lose money. And then once it's privatized, you'll never get it back to a public entity. You'll try to go and you as an individual will have a problem. I did see something in the paper about that. It was not, it was actually, I said the paper, but it was Cake News actually had done a report that said that they had, gosh, if I'm trying to pull it up what it was, but this specific public entity had decided to no longer do business with this private entity that was a trash collection service because they had over 10,000 complaints. 10,000 complaints. Can you imagine having 10,000 complaints go out before anything was done? And then you just reinvent the wheel because now you've got to find another collection service to do the same job, hoping that there's accountability. Yeah, we've been through this one before.
And love her or not, Suzanne Loomis provides a wonderful, wonderful analysis of why the city of Newton probably should not consider privatization of their trash collection. Mm-hmm. And also, quite honestly, even though it was never brought up, it's a great reason why they should not have privatized the recycling collection.
Well, that was by demand.
Okay?
Yeah.
Well, I know. But there's a reason that shouldn't have been done, and here it is. That street that's in front of your house isn't designed for a whole lot of truck traffic. The more trucks you put on it, the quicker it's going to come up for replacement. All right? So complain to me about your trash rate all you want. Complain to me that you don't like your garbage man because, 10 years ago, when he was also in charge of your recycling, he threw a little notice on your trash can. Complain to me about all that. That's fine. But let me tell you something. Those special assessment taxes that you're paying are going to shoot through the ever-loving moon if we have to redo a double miles for streets for several years just because we've had so much extra truck traffic.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. And back to I want to go
because
back to
right
this
now,
too, Chad, what you
it's pretty controlled.
Yeah.
But if we go private and we allow everybody to call their own whatever trash company they want,
oh man,
that's not going to be a good plan.
Yeah. No, because then you're going to have 10 trash trucks driving.
But what we're talking about are the unintended consequences of budgetary decisions.
Yeah.
And the idea is that one person's governmental waste is another person's really necessary program.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right? So you could make the case that they should have never renovated the pool. You can make the case that they should have just closed it down. But there's a whole lot of families in the summer that are using that. To them, that's really necessary. You could make the case that they should have never renovated the library. But again, there's a whole lot of people using it, and that's a necessary thing for them. At the county level, you can make the case that, we don't need to do that many miles of road a year. But then we're going to get further behind. And it's going to cost more when we get to it. Little hint, folks, every piece of deferred maintenance costs more in the long run.
Yeah. Or like even then, like what we were talking about with, I've got one for you. We could decide that we don't want to give the sheriff's department the increase that they're asking for more patrol officers, but there's going to be a consequence for that.
And you know what? That brings up something else interesting from last night.
But I want to say something before we move on. I don't know. The question that you said is that's difficult for people to answer and is frustrating for all players at the table is, I want my taxes to go down. I don't think we should raise taxes. Okay, well, where do you want to cut? I don't know. And I think what's happening right now, and this is true, is that because everything is going up, because to be totally honest, we talk about a 2.3% inflation rate that's currently happening right now. Over the last 6 years, it's been 20%.
Yes.
Okay. So when we're talking about, I think 4 years, we'll just say 4 years to be safe. Over the last 4 years, inflation has happened to the point where it's costing me 20% more for X, Y, and Z across the board. And I'm having to figure out how to come up with that money because wages are not are not keeping pace. So, I just think we need to we just don't need to raise taxes. We don't need to raise taxes. That's all the further a lot of people go. We can't raise our taxes. Everything's costing more money. Okay, what do you think we should cut?
The real question is, what is it you can live without? Okay? And when I say that, I'm saying what governmental service can you live without? That's the question. Okay? I mean, and there's all different ways we can go about that. You want to tell the sheriff that we're no longer going to have deputies from, let's say 1:15 a.m. to 4:45 a.m.
Or just have them on call.
That is, again, not to toot my own horn, but I'm a little more informed than the average bear. But that's what I call the dead zone. Mm-hmm. Okay?
It's where most crimes take place.
There's not a whole lot of calls going into 911 between about 1:45 or so until about 4:45 or so. Okay? That's the low period, right? So straight up, when I'm on call for juvenile intake overnight, and it happens at least 2 nights a month. Okay? If I go to bed at 2 a.m., I know I'm going to be able to sleep until 5. All bets are off after that. I know that when I'm on during the day, if I make it until 4:30, the likelihood of a call coming for me is very low, because the absolute peak for 911 calls is right around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Nobody has ever been able to really figure out why it is that way. But if we want to do that, we want to tell Chad Gay that we're no longer going to have deputies at his disposal from 2 to 5. There's a budget cut. Are you willing to make it? Are you willing to, if you end up being the exception to the rule, needing to call 911 at 2:30 a.m., are you willing to be told there's no one to help you? I don't think so. Okay? We could, at the city level, we could look at our police or our fire EMS department and say, you know what? This is how much you get to spend on gas this year. It's less than what it was last year. You just gonna have to figure it out. So when 911 gets called on the 29th of February for leap year, and you're told, well, they don't have gas for their vehicles. You willing to go down that road? I don't think so.
Well, and roads.
Now
is
these
another
all
one.
sound like really extreme examples.
Yeah. Well,
but I'm going to give
really.
I'm going to give one. I'm going to give another one. This is not an extreme example. Okay? When we're looking at the budget cuts, if you know, and I never do this, but I'm going to make a suggestion for a budget cut at the county level. It's not state mandated that we have a driver's license office. Mm-hmm. It's just not. So we could make a cut. So we're talking 2, maybe 3 full-time employees. Bye-bye. And quite honestly, I'm not, if we're talking about making a cut, I'm not willing to take those employees and just shift them into another department. We're talking about making a cut. So we have to get rid of those people. There's a stark reality for everyone who walks in there and says we need to cut the budget. Who are we putting out of work?
Well, not only that, but that place is used regularly. I don't think there's necessarily any downtime.
Well, and here's the consequence of that action. If you're not eligible to renew online, or you're going for your learner's permit, or you've just moved here from out of state, so you're going for your first Kansas license, you're not going to be going to the Harvey County Courthouse to accomplish that. You can go to McPherson. You can go to Wichita. You go down to Wichita, you can wait all day. Mm-hmm. So that's the consequence of the budget cut. I'm not fear-mongering here, people. Every budget cut will come with a consequence. Okay? And just to be brutal about this, because you have to be, you have to hit them right in the face. You're not going to get where you want to go, because where apparently you want to go is a revenue neutral rate. Okay? You are not going to get to that revenue neutral rate by cutting copy paper or putting off the replacement of computers or putting off renovations to the courthouse. Guess what? Those renovations are going to happen. They need to happen. Okay? In order to get where you need to go, because we're talking more than $1 million. You're talking about people and departments.
And that still doesn't even scratch the surface.
And
it still doesn't scratch the surface.
The same is going to be true for the school district. The same is going to be true for the city. The same is going to be true for the rec commission. All of them. The inflationary forces that have been at play. The inflationary forces that have been at play caused the Newton Recreation Commission to pay almost double for chlorine. And we're talking per unit cost here, guys. It's not that they used a bunch more.
It's
but
just
they
the same
paid
amount cost
double
more
this year than they did last year.
Mm-hmm. Vehicle costs, replacement of vehicle costs, Chad. If you can get a vehicle replaced today.
Yeah, and you know what? The Rec Commission approved a bid this morning for a new pickup truck.
Well, but see, here's okay. Let's go back to this.
And I'm looking at what they paid. I'm going, good Lord! And they paid more last year.
What, like $75,000?
No, it's not. It's not that high.
Huh.
Okay, consider this is truly. I mean, what they did is they basically bought a fleet vehicle. They bought a vehicle that the dealer had ordered for somebody else, and somebody else refused it. Well, now it's on sale.
Yeah.
So real smart. I mean, I'm not being facetious.
Well, it goes
smart.
back to like what
That's smart purchasing.
Yeah. I mean, in these other departments,
but you know,
the county are doing the same thing.
You got people
They're buying used vehicles.
Yeah, and in some cases, and this was the case this morning, when you look at used vehicles that are less than 3-4 years old, shoot, you might as well spend just a couple grand and get a new one.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, all of that has been going on.
Yeah. Well, your phone's only just a click away, and I'm here to tell everybody through Facebook, you don't need a new truck. What are they spending money on that for? They don't. They drive around in all these new vehicles, and I don't have a vehicle that I can drive around in that's new. It's who needs chlorine, Chad? You just don't understand, Chad. You don't understand that we don't need those things. That we should just cut that out.
Well, they're replacing a truck that's like 20 years old. So,
Yeah.
I think we're good on that.
Well,
one.
they just need to drive it longer. I mean, we got to drive it longer, Chad.
Sure.
Yeah. They don't know what they're talking about. They
Sure.
don't know what they're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you my smarts into those meetings. And here's why I think it's great that I brought the Rec Commission into this conversation. You could have been at the meeting this morning to talk about that.
There was a meeting?
Yeah.
What? When was there a meeting?
7 a.m.
What?
You don't have the excuse that you had to work. Not a whole lot of people are working people who work nights are working at 7 a.m.
Well, they should do a better job.
They're not done yet.
No, because I didn't know. So they need to do a better job of that.
What's your middle name? Because I want to use it right about now, Lance.
You can't make it up though, Chad. It's like I've been criticized because I'm critical of people. Like I do not have a tolerance for it. Like I'm just gonna say it. I'm a no bullshit type of person. Okay, and when that comes around the pipe, it doesn't do anything but make me go, yeah, no. Yeah, the
thing is that what you're alluding to, we can educate people on how to be informed. We can't force them to do it. We can educate people on how to understand things like a mill levy. We can't force them to do it. It's just that simple.
Well, I promise you this.
And I've known this for 30 years. I can spill all the ink I want trying to help people understand and educate people on stuff. I can't force them to pick it up, and I can't force them to look at it, and I can't force them to understand it. It just doesn't work that way.
But do you know how many people I talk to that just say, not interested, not interested, not interested?
And for those folks, I have a message. I'm telling you, I'm cranky today. The next time your water bill goes up, the next time your utility bill goes up, and if it is the water rate that went up, don't call me. Don't call me to complain.
But you should write something about it, Chad.
I did.
You did?
When the decisions were made.
You did?
Yep.
Well, I wouldn't know because I don't subscribe to the Kansan. I don't have $5.
That's your problem. That's
$5
I mean,
for an online subscription.
Yeah. My kids got to eat. Your kids got to eat too. Okay.
I mean, I don't know. The only thing I could do is laugh about it because otherwise it's like, yeah, okay, whatever.
I can't force it on you, but I'm doing it.
And then
I'm giving you the information. I can't force it on you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the deal. So when I hear people like last night telling the commission that the commission was not ready for this meeting, okay, because they weren't providing. This is exactly what he was saying. They weren't providing visuals during the meeting.
We've already done all that.
Okay. Well, I don't know where you got your notice for the meeting. I mean, I really don't. I don't know if it was a commissioner who called you to tell you to be there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was the 1-paragraph, 2-paragraph notification that was on the front page of the Newton Kansan. That's where it was, by the way. I don't know if it was an email that you signed up for with the county. By the way, there's a legal definition of what a legal notice of a meeting is. And it is not the same definition that most people hold. So I don't know if that's where you got it. But the bottom line is that if you got a copy of the agenda digitally, like I did.
Like I do. It's very easy.
You were treated to close to 60 pages of documentation of the budget within that.
And then every hearing that they had up to this point.
So who was unprepared for this meeting? Mm-hmm. Okay? I mean, straight up, who was unprepared?
Well, living in a victim society.
Was it the commissioners who announced in advance that we're going to have a hearing, and the purpose of the hearing is to listen to the concerns of the public? Or was it the folks who walked in there without nary a clue as to what was going on? They just knew there was a hearing. Who is it was unprepared?
The victim. Chad,
okay.
The victim of their own choices. But they're the victim.
And I was sitting there during the meeting looking at the agenda and the attachments going, okay, so when he says that what's driving this $3 million increase is the Road and Bridge Department and the Sheriff's Department. Okay, so what did they spend last year? Oh, that's what they spent last year. What are they proposing to spend this year? Oh, that's what they're going to spend this year. Provided this is what actually gets approved on the 20th of September. No guarantees.
Well, speaking of cutting costs, I'd like to propose something, Chad.
Sure.
Commissioner pay.
Not going to get you to $1.34 million.
Well, it's going to cut out about $140,000, maybe $150,000 by the time you take out pay and benefits. And I don't understand why every other agency that we have that's a municipality gets either nothing or a very small stipend.
Couple $100 a meeting type thing.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
But hey, they're going to get a 2.5% or are scheduled to get a 2.5% increase. And then with insurance costs that go up this year over last year, seems to me that they'd get like a package of about $45,000, maybe close to $50,000. $50,000 to show up to a meeting once a week, Chad.
Well, it is more than that.
Oh, I'm not so sure that I would say that's the case, given some commissioners go in there and have absolutely no idea what's going on. To do it
right, it's more than that.
Okay, so 20 hours a week.
20
hours a week. Let's say they get they put in 20 hours a week. And this was discussed before too, Chad. See, it was discussed, and one commissioner in particular was opposed to that. The other two said, well, I would consider that. But there was one that absolutely thought that would just be disastrous.
It is what it is.
I don't know, when you go in there and you're asking questions that you could have answered from a 5 or 15-minute phone call to a department head earlier in the week because you got the commission agenda in advance to know, I'm starting to think how much time is actually spent. And then how do we know how much time is actually spent? I'm sure there's a way to capture that, but why are we not holding our commissioners accountable for the $50,000 a year that taxpayers are paying out for their services?
Okay, so there's 150 grand.
Okay.
All right. I need another 1.2 million.
Let's start there. You
No,
know,
no.
Think about this.
I need another 1.2 million out of the
and
alliance.
I'm with you. But remember now, we actually had people going out that were questioning why we spend $9,000 on Caring Hand Humane Society.
All right, and we're up to $159,000.
$3,000 for Circle of Hope. Let's say
we're at $162,000.
and this is where we're at. But I say this. The reason why I'm mentioning commissioner pay has a lot to do with the fact that if we're going to start cutting jobs, then why is it that they're not tightening their belt buckle up? They want to make sure that you know, that we're tightening up. We're tightening it up. But then when it comes to, well, what about you? Why don't you tighten up a little bit? Why don't you take a 30% decrease in your pay, and that helps the overall budget at least some? Then maybe, you know, maybe we'll have a little less outgoing expenditures going on. I'm just saying. It's
the bottom line is that when you're looking at a county budget, there's a couple principles. Number one, it sets priorities. So let's take a look at where the money is really getting spent, because those are the priorities.
Mostly it's getting spent on roads, bridges, and law enforcement.
Correct.
Those are our two biggest.
Correct.
Hey, wait till we got, wait. We're not even into the jail yet that we're going to have to bond. We're not even into the courthouse that we're going to have to figure out how to upgrade. So what are we going to do then?
I don't know.
We need to cut $17 million out the budget, Chad.
There's a little statute that people don't know about when it comes to the courthouse upgrades that I think, depending on how the commission approaches those over the course of the next little bit, could get really interesting. People don't know, okay, that the chief judge has the power
to make a ruling,
to walk into that commission room and say, look, this is what we need. This is what it's going to cost. Pay for it. Doesn't matter. The rest of the courthouse absolutely does not matter to them. But they have the ability to do that. That is all run by the state. And the other thing that people don't get is just how much of what the county does is dictated by state statute. So when I threw out there, you know, there's no state statute that says we have to have a driver's license office. There are state statutes for some of the other offices that are in that courthouse.
Yeah, like all of them.
And there are state statutes for departments that aren't even in the courthouse and are being moved. I mean, seriously, folks, there's state statutes that say you as a county, you have to do this.
You have to pay for it.
Okay? I am amazed how many people get shocked when I say, the county commission's kind of interesting. So here's an interesting tidbit about the county commission. You're questioning whether or not it's worth $50 grand a year for each one of those people. Mm-hmm. They're not only county commissioners. They are also our county board of health. Mm-hmm. They are also our county elections board.
You're not moving me, Chad, on watching what they do.
Well, but I understand that. But I'm just saying that what I'm saying is this. When we elect a county commissioner, we are electing someone to not one, but we are electing them to 3 different positions and 3 different jobs. And that doesn't even cover all of the boards and advisory boards and all that other stuff that they attend to. Okay? So if we're gonna expand our commission, that's been discussed. Mm-hmm. How are we gonna handle that? Okay? Financially speaking, I don't think we can right now.
Yeah, you can. You can have 5 and just cut their wages and deflect this.
Well, that's the only way you could pull it off. Is to take what's being paid now and cut it individually.
You know what will never happen? Here's what will never happen, because this is politics 101 and is the way our system works. When do you think you're going to see a state legislator say, I think because we're in a financial problem and a financial crisis for our state, and all of these other citizens are having to tighten their belt a little bit, then we should have a reduction in pay. We should all tighten our belt a little bit and give 5% back. Do you know you're not going to get a U.S. senator to do that? You know you're not going to get a U.S. representative to do that? You know you're not going to get the governor to do that? You know you're not going to get any governmental entity who's elected to office to say, you know what? My community is struggling, and I think that we as elected officials could also give some back. You know,
well, we did have a county commissioner that voted against that pay increase for those very reasons. Just putting it out there.
2.5% increase in insurance increase.
Voted against it for the very reasons. Just saying.
Well, city commissioners make about $175 after you take taxes out. They're about what, $125
per meeting. Yeah, it's a per meeting thing. Yeah.
It's not even per meeting.
Yeah,
because that's a month, right? How much do school board members make? $0. Every other municipality surrounding Newton and Harvey County, how much do they make?
I have no idea, but it ain't squat.
Next to nothing, the same amount. So why is it that right now nobody's bringing that up? Did anybody last night at the meeting say, hey, you know what? Any citizens say, I think that you guys need to look at the amount of money that you make, and if I have to do more with less, then so do you.
There were only about 3 things that were brought up that they were being encouraged to consider. And of the 3, there's one that's just, I mean, it's water under the bridge. It's over. It's done with. The money is already spent. We're not getting it back.
Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly, it's time to move on. Okay? And I get it. Instead of spending money on a shower house at West Park, you want my kid to walk from where our camping spot is, which is where we're told we're supposed to be. You want them to walk almost a mile and go out on the streets, the public streets, to get to it. I get you. Okay? You're upset. You've been upset. You've been continued to be upset. But that's over. And that's not going to affect our 2025 budget. It can't. It's done. What does affect our 2025 budget? How many miles of road are we going to redo next year? Are we going to continue to keep our driver's license station open? Are we going to stay fully staffed in the Department on Aging? Are we going to continue to operate interurban? By the way, most of what goes on in interurban is funded with state grant funds. And that's one of those things I wish people understood. You know, as a community corrections worker, I work out of that courthouse at all hours, but there's not a single dime of being paid by the county for me. That's all funded from state grants. Oh, and by the way, that particular office, it's a joint office. And so my paychecks, they're not even coming from Harvey County. Think about that one for a minute. So, you know, you could make the case that we don't need a juvenile intake office, and I'm not so sure that it's mandated by the state that we have one, and yada yada. I mean, you can go down that road, but when you do, who's really paying for it? Well, you know, the paycheck is coming from McPherson County. The position is 100% funded by grants from the state. The state grant goes away, I go away.
You better figure out where that grant came from, because if it came from George Soros or Mark Zuckerberg, we don't need to have it.
No, that's not where it came from.
I'm trying to hear it. I mean, I gotta come on.
You want to know locally who has more to do with that grant?
Yeah.
You want to know locally who has more to do with that grant and those funds than George Soros and Mark Zuckerberg? Mm-hmm. Stephen Owens. There you go. He's on the committee. But again, when we're looking at all of this, and I'm not saying they can't cut and they shouldn't cut. What I'm saying is I am tired of listening to cut the budget and then you're not offering any solution. Okay? I'm not talking directly to you, Lance. Yeah. You just gave us one.
But I'm with you.
But when you go to these meetings and you're going to stand there and you're going to make, I mean, it's always the same thing. For 30 years of this, it's always the same thing. You're going to price my neighbor out of their home. You're going to tax them right out of their home. Okay, I understand that. I understand that. Some of your commissioners will understand that. David Nygaard made a heck of a lot of hay saying the following. He goes, at some point, you know what they're going to do? They're going to go, here, city, here's the keys. And they're just going to leave. I can still see him doing it in the chambers. And it's not that some of these guys don't understand these concepts. The question is, what can you live without? What can we live without? Because that's what we're talking about. So give us that answer.
Well, if I don't go to the pool, we can live without the pool. If I don't go to the library, we can live without the library. If I don't have animals, and I'm not concerned with what happens with the animals, and I don't really care whether we have a no-kill shelter or not, then Caring Hands can go.
Well, what about our animal control officers?
Why do we need that?
You see?
We'll just make an ordinance where people can trap things and then dispose of them accordingly. And hey, who needs that?
And then when that herd of cats, I think that's what you call them, when that herd of 20 freaking stray cats moves into the vacant property next door, what do you do about it?
It's not my problem, not my house.
They're shitting in my freaking sandbox.
Well, then you just need to trap them and dispose of them accordingly, Chad. And I'm not saying that we do this, folks, but this is where I'm at.
I can't do that.
Yeah, like, why do we need parks? I don't go to the park. Why do we need, well, I already said the pool. We don't need that because I don't go to the pool. So, we don't need a shower house at West Park because I don't go to West Park.
And by the way, when you're ranting on parks, especially at the county level, it wasn't in the not too distant past we had a big referendum on parks.
Yeah.
And a public vote. And the public made it pretty darn clear what they expect from the county.
Yeah. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I'm with you. And people, I'm not saying, I mean, people take what I say in context. Well, it'll obviously be taken out of context. Exactly. Because that's how spicy it all has to be.
That's why I call you on some of that stuff.
But the truth of the matter is listening to this in its full context is, I can't help but be critical when this type of thinking becomes pervasive. And that's what it is. It's this. I mean, we have come down and deduced ourselves. I mean, I have a very critical perspective of many individuals that try to espouse certain things because I look at it from the shoe on the other foot. And I ask the question, do people even read? Well, do people even take the time to read, or do they just say, oh my goodness? It's like Chad, I've seen it before. I subscribe to the Kansan. Sometimes you guys post stuff to the Kansan and you'll have a heading on it, right? And then you've got all of these people that are commenting underneath it, okay? And have absolutely no idea what they're talking about because they can't even read it because they don't subscribe to the Kansan. I made a joke to our lunch group the other day, okay? And it was that, man, I'm so glad that the city paid for those railroad tracks to be replaced and it didn't cost us taxpayers a dime. I saw that on social media. That was and I quote on social media. Okay. So it's like, besides being the guy that gets on there and it's just like, hey, did you read that? You know, you thought you saw something, but did you actually read through it and use some critical thinking skills? Or how about this? How about this, Chad? People lie. Is that news? Is that new? I mean, is that news to you?
Oh, no.
That's breaking news. Breaking news, people. Breaking news. People lie. And they lie because they want to justify the end with their means. That's what they do. People lie. Imagine it. Could you believe it? People lie. Chad, did you know that?
Well, some of us spend the bulk of our time telling the truth, but
this is the thing.
It's kind of the life mission.
Well, I mean, I bet if you went up and you asked somebody, did you actually look at all this information at the budget hearings that we've had over the course of this time, and you still got this to say? Well, yeah. No, and damn good and well they didn't. Because if they did, then you'd know that they would have been able to easily comprehend
and I don't have to confront people. When I listen to them talk, I know. There's a statement.
Just can't believe that I would say what I say about some people,
I don't have to confront people, because when I listen to them talk, I know whether or not they've done their homework. Yeah. It's not that hard, especially if you've done the homework yourself, you know. When I listen to people talk, I can tell you what cable news network they watch at night. It's not that hard. But, you have to have done your research in order to do it.
I'm just going to take it in. I'm just going to take it in, and then I'm going to regurgitate what I hear. I'm not going to have any critical thinking skills. I'm not going to consider the source. I'm not going to research it any farther. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to take it in, and it goes in and out, and it bypasses this brain that we have.
Yeah, and you know what? There were people that spoke during the budget hearing. I'm rewinding. During the budget hearing last night, I can tell you exactly what television they watch at night. It's not hard. Okay? And if, since I'm just being the cranky jerk today, I'm sorry. That crap does not belong in a county budget hearing. We're talking about a county budget hearing. That's what we're talking about. I don't care for your opinion on national politics during a county budget hearing. Now, if we were having a discussion about some national policy, then I care about your opinion on the national level. But we're talking about a county budget hearing. I'm sorry, that's what we're talking about. Amazingly, there were no people at the Rec Commission hearings this morning. They're going to exceed the revenue neutral rate.
Well, what time was that?
7 a.m.
Well, how come I didn't know about that?
Well, you didn't take a look at the front page of the paper any time in the last 3 days, so that's fine. But I'm just telling you.
And we just covered it like 30 minutes ago on the program.
There was nobody there. Yeah. And this is over and over and over again. This is what goes on. Okay. You're all upset at the county. The question is, what's the difference between the NRC and the county? When it comes to the budgets, what's the difference? Even for those that have actually researched and know when these hearings occur, what is the difference between those two organizations?
Shoot, Chad. Not literally, but figuratively.
The rec mill levy is going down. They're still exceeding revenue neutral rate, but their mill levy is going down. There's that.
So what you're saying is my taxes are going to go down.
No. The numbers aren't as big. And the numbers aren't as big. Okay? And the number of people being taxed by the NRC is smaller as well. However, that leads me to a cold, hard, simple truth when we're talking about all these budgets that I want people to ingest and start to come to grips with and start to understand. Even though, supposedly, even though our population in Newton has actually shrunk over the last couple years, which doesn't surprise me. I mean, seriously, we lost a whole ton of jobs out on the west side of town when the cabinet company decided to close down. That's a lot of jobs. That was going to mean some people finding work somewhere else and probably moving. Because the number one thing that attracts somebody to a community is a job. Spare me all the other nonsense. The number one thing that is going to attract somebody to a community is a job. Even though we've shrunk a little bit, Newton is still more than 50% of Harvey County population numbers. So that city tax rate is huge because more than 50% of Harvey County is going to get caught up in it. The Newton Recreation Commission is huge because more than 50% and even more residents of Harvey County are going to get caught up in it. Because when the Newton Recreation Commission was created, someone was very wise and created the taxing entity. The overarching taxing entity is USD 373. The borders of that extend beyond the city borders. It includes North Newton and Walton and a whole bunch of rural property surrounding our community. I really feel like that was a really smart and big deal that when they created that Recreation Commission. So while there's fewer people affected than a county tax rate, when you take a look at it, it would be probably the second largest taxing entity in our county. I haven't actually done the ranks. I'm just saying I would believe they would be the second largest taxing entity in the county. And, you know, for a while we had a city manager and a couple other people that were trying to make a lot of hay over the fact that that's a very large taxing entity when you look at it. However, that is not an elected board. Every member of that commission is appointed. They're not elected. There's no elections. They were making that point that they didn't feel like unelected people should control a tax levy. I understand that. But at the same time, we have an elected county board that is overseeing 42 mills, which they're talking about moving to 45 mills. We have an elected board in USD 373, same taxing size, same taxing entities as Newton Rec, 53 mills last year. City last year, 72 mills. Rec Commission, 8.9. So when we're talking about how much they're controlling, and that's in due in part that they're a pass-through from the actual taxing entity of USD 373. Okay? And I think, you know, Rick alluded to why the county became such a lightning rod or often becomes such a lightning rod when it comes to this stuff. And here it is. All of the taxes are collected by the county. Collected by the county. Your check will go to county. And then they distribute those things to all of the other entities based on what is happening right now. So, yeah, it's pretty easy to paint a target on the county. And even though your whole check is going there, and that whole 177 mills of that group that I just listed, along with 20 more for the state, and along with a couple more for Sand Creek Watershed. And then if you live in the townships, there's a little bit more, right? So that 177 is just a baseline. Even though that all that's going to when you're writing your check out, it's all going to the county. Everybody else is just sitting and waiting for the county to collect it and hand it to them. So I get why the county can be such a lightning rod. I just really want, or would really love, to feel like people have really informed themselves before they walk into those meetings. I mean, perfect case in point, one of my favorite people in the planet polled one last night, okay? Was asking that, and this is how he put it, if Newton was being overtaxed because Newton has its own police department, and its own police department that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, which means that the county sheriff is not providing services to Newton other than maybe the service of warrants. Well, and it's a valid question. I would propose to him that he ask that same question, but he use a different example. Okay? Because the example that he posed, it just shows that he hasn't done all of the background that he needed to do. Because the number one department that gets mutual assist from the county sheriff's department is Newton. It all goes back to more than half our population is here. This is where everybody's going to have to spend some time, period. No ifs, no ands, no buts about it. You know, I spent 18 months as the administrator of the RSVP program and had to spend 18 months reminding, because that board was made up of representatives from every community in our county. And I had one that was constantly saying, let's move the banquet. Let's move the banquet. It shouldn't be in Newton every year. And I finally gave in and I said, I'm just going to tell you point blank, I don't think this is what's best for this program. And I want you to understand more than half of the population is in Newton, which also extrapolates into the volunteer base that we have. There, more than half of them are in Newton. So we moved it. We got a great deal out of the city of Burton to use their downtown building that has a gymnasium in it. Nobody showed up. Why? Because half of our population was 20 miles away, and we're talking about older adults who don't want to drive at night. I mean, that's a very stereotypical statement, but I heard it over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's worth saying.
So that's why Newton PD is the #1 supported agency. And you would think it would be somebody else, because most of those other small towns either A, don't have a police department, Walton, or B, do not have 24-hour coverage, almost everybody else.
But I take it back to this, and we're coming to the end of the program, Chad. I'm going to give you the last word. That's another thing that's in state statute.
Correct.
If a community, township, whatever, any area that's not covered by a municipality and their law enforcement agency is required by statute to be the responsibility of the sheriff's department.
One, if you've got, say, 4 guys on patrol in the city of Newton, you got 4 guys on patrol. I'm just giving a number. I know I'm pretty close to the number. In the middle of the afternoon, fight breaks out at the high school, and this does happen and has happened. And now all 4, or like every officer you have on patrol, is now involved. And a call comes in from somewhere else. How do you handle that call that's coming in from somewhere else? you send the sheriff. Newton's staffing issues affect that dramatically. So, it's coming. The discussion is coming. Does the city want to make cuts to their police department? No, they don't. They want to expand it. And one of the things that was said by Chad Gay last night, which I appreciate so much, he says you can ask any law enforcement administrator in the United States today, do you have enough officers? And they will say no. He wanted 6 new ones. That's what he thinks he needs. He's not getting 6. If it's a priority, and we're going to try and give him as much as we can, then your taxes are going to go up. It's just the way it works.
Well, and it goes back to this, and I'll give my final word on this one, okay? People, when you pay taxes, it goes to services. Services for the whole, everyone, whether that be roads, law enforcement, fill in the blank. It's services. If you want your taxes to go down, especially in this time of inflation, then you're going to have to pick what services you think we can do without. It's the way that it is. And I think that it's very important that we as a citizen population start to think about things like this in those terms. Stop being input, regurgitate. Use that thing that you have, it's called a brain, and think about what's happening. Educate yourself. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. So educate yourself on what's going on, what's taking place. I've said it before, have some critical thinking skills. Think through this process. Don't just be an intake. Don't just be an intake and a regurgitate. Think about these things. Process through these things. Use your critical thinking skills. Knowledge is power, and that is where you can affect the greatest amount of change, is by using your brain. Chad, final word.
Ribbon cutting for the inclusive playground is on Monday, and I can't wait.
Nice.
The kids are already playing on it. If you drive by, it's like music. It's wonderful. So I'm going to leave us with an uplifting note, right? So I plan on being at the ribbon cutting, and, you know, if anybody thinks I'm making too big of a deal out of it, you can go ahead and call me, but understand I ain't going to listen to you, because this is a big deal. This is a huge deal. I've said it multiple times. This is Newton's finest hour, so let's celebrate.
I concur. I concur. Well, there you have it, folks, and thanks for listening to this episode of HC Talk with Chad and myself. Have a good week, every county.